Welcome. We are thrilled. How's that? Am I projecting? Thrilled. You heard that word. Thrilled to be featuring the art of Dennis Shives through January 7th, and you're sitting in the middle of it, and it's a fantastic exhibit. I hope you've had a chance to see it, or some of you may not have, but stick around afterwards and have a look if you haven't. It's wonderful. Today we're going to chat with Dennis Shives, who is a strong candidate for the title of most interesting person in Ojai, and that is saying something. There's some other contenders in this room, I think I see. But, so we're going to chat with Dennis about himself and about his art and about whatever direction he may take the conversation in. And a little ways in, if we beg him, he may just read one of his new stories from his new book. He'll have more to read next Friday, but we promised you a conversation, and we're certainly going to start with that, and we'll take questions eventually. So, Dennis, for the sake of this looks like a Dennis-friendly crowd, but there may be one or two people who are not totally familiar with your CV. So let's give them the bio stuff first. So you are a lifelong Ojai Valley person with side jaunts to Santa Paula, am I correct?
Yes, that's
Upper
true.
Valley?
Yes, Upper Valley. Yeah, I've lived here for a long time.
Dennis, I don't think you'd mind if you point out his 70th birthday was just a week or two ago, so.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And he's been making art for, what, 55 or so of those years at least?
At least.
And counting. So, you grew up mostly in the Upper Valley, right? Santa Paula High School, I know. Matilla Junior High, local boy, Summit School. At what point early on, perhaps, did you know you were going to have art inclinations?
Well, my grandmother, May Caskey, was a painter, and I grew up around her. Right? She was my babysitter and my, confidant and stuff. It's great to have a great grandmother, somebody you love. And her house stunk like turpentine because she painted pictures all the time. And when you grow up like that, it kind of gets into your blood, and pretty soon you're doing that too. You're making strange things and painting them, and creatively you just develop into that kind of person because you can. Your relatives can do it, and you go, I can do that. If they can do it, I can do it.
So Grandma was a great inspiration to you, but as I think you've told me, classroom teachers somewhat less inspirational, you found.
Yeah, well, I don't know. When you are doing this kind of stuff, you've got to light your own fire. You have to get, inspired yourself, and you have to do things. I did anyway. This is just my own personal thing. You have to do things that you want to do, and that didn't go real well with some of my teachers. They were trying to train you into doing, making a living at some of these things and stuff, and that's kind of an oxymoron. I don't know exactly how you're supposed to do this, but you got to do it from your heart. You have to do things that you mean when you do them. I do anyway, and I had trouble with that in school. I would kind of get along with the people, do what they wanted a little bit, but I pretty much did what I had to do. Everything you do, you learn something from, and it builds, you get better at doing things. And you just have to follow your own path, And it's a crooked road.
So you didn't color inside the box, obviously.
Well, I got outside the lines a little bit, yes.
Outside the line. Now you went off to Ventura College gave the instructors another shot at it for a while, right? And then you switched into rock and roll, wasn't it? We're talking.
Well, yes, we kind of sagged over into music, because it was kind of the thing to do back then. But I tried to make some, an effort at Ventura College, but it was another one of these things where they just, it just wasn't what I was doing. But I hung in there for a couple of years, but it was, music was calling.
Right, so late 60s, and Ojai was a hotbed of of rock and roll. Does everyone remember, I don't, because I wasn't here, but the Ojai Club, where the pizza place is now? Dennis has some strong memories of the Ojai Club. The house band you were in, right?
House band
lead
at the
singer,
Ojai Club.
harmonica?
Yep, lead singer and harmonica player. And it used to be really a great place, you know, when we were down there. It was really a lot of fun.
Remember the pitcher of beer? There's a story about the pitcher of beer.
Oh yeah, coming in to go to work at one evening, I'm walking down the street and the whole front window just bashes out, and there's a pitcher of beer. You can see the pitcher of beer suspended in the air, you know, just with all the glass trailing behind it. You know, I thought, boy, this is going to be a great night. I can just tell.
That was the band with John Orvis, right? And
yeah, the
Curtis Lowe.
Ohio All-Stars is what it was called.
Ohio All-Stars.
Yeah, John Orvis, Kurt Lowe, well, there were 2 or 3 other. You know, we had people come and sit in, too. Rabbit Mackay was
The late Rabbit Mackay.
Yeah, he just died here recently. He was a sit-in guy, you know.
Yeah.
Bunch of great people.
Well, what diverted you from rock and roll stardom?
What
Diverted you?
diverted me? Well, I don't know. You get out and play, and when you're doing it, you know, some place that you like to go, and it's easy to do. But once you get out on the road and get to staying in hotels, and there's, you know, it's just not the same. It's just not as fun. And I'm actually glad I got out of it, got away from it, because I started into art. I started, you know, following my art again, which is a little, you know, less, it's not as hard on you. It's a hard job to get out and play music. You got to rehearse all the time. You got to battle with all the people you're working with. You know, they all have an opinion of what's going on, and it's a pretty stressful job, you know. And when you're working by yourself, there's nothing to it.
So you say. Okay, so Rock's Loss is I was going to say art skating, because you do so many different kinds, but what was the first one now that you were sort of making your career as did you start as a craftsman and kind of work your way into woodworking, and how does that work out?
Well, I did, Barbara Bowman here, I did a bunch of work for Barbara when I was, you know, younger. We built a store in Beverly Hills. We did some, you know, construction around here. You know.
So carpentry and then into woodworking?
Yeah, you mix the two together. You kind of, you know, make it artful. And in the process, you know, whenever you can, you paint and draw and do, you know, the things that come to you. Most of the things I do they have a story to them. You know, there's a reason why you made them. They're not just painting a picture of a chicken or something. They're like, I knew that chicken.
And what's he going to do next? And why did he cross the road? Well, so woodworking was the art here for you. I mean, how did you develop? And you also made I think gold jewelry. I mean,
I did gold jewelry. I got into casting. I made everything. I think I've made just about everything. I've made, you know, fancy everything. You just play with everything.
And taught yourself.
Yeah, you kind of teach yourself. You look at things and you see how they go. I learn by doing and by seeing. I don't learn by listening. You know, a lot of people, they can read something and get something from it. I don't. I have to do it, and I have to touch it. I have to put my hands on it and be part of it, you know. And I find that with all kinds with young people. You get out, you know, when you're doing sand sculptures and stuff, the kids want to do, you know, like hands-on kind of stuff. In this day and age, there's not much call for it, you know. It's interesting. They've really been interested in this show, all the young people that have come in to see all of the carving and all the stuff, you know. It's like a venue that they haven't been offered, you know, in their school systems nowadays.
Yeah, you can't just touch a screen and have it.
Yeah.
You have to pick up a three-dimensional object and do stuff with it. Well, you as you're kind of working your way into this, I mean, I know that Gail told me a story. I'll self-plug. If anyone's interested, I wrote a story about Dennis in the current Ojai Quarterly, which will only be on the streets in another 2 weeks or so. So grab them while you can. I'm using it as my own cheat sheet. So Gail told me a story about walking down El Roblar Drive at some point circa 1980, 81, and there was what's now the juice bar place was your studio at the time, and there was a window and it was lit up, and that Gatling gun was in the it was lit up, and Gail thought, who is this? Who made this? I got to meet him. So you guys have been friends, I think, ever since. Well, what was the what's the story behind the Gatling gun? I assume you've all seen it. It's made of wood. It fires rubber bands.
We didn't put the rubber bands on it because we knew you guys would want to get in there and shoot it. Especially Charlie back there. I could see the look in his eye. Well, the rubber band machine gun, I was doing an office for T.W. Brown Oil, and he hired me to build desks and, entry gates and all kinds of stuff. And everything I made for him, I put hidden drawers in it, although they had 5 or 6 hidden drawers and everything. He had a windfall of money when gasoline went up in price. He had a whole bunch of gasoline sitting around, and it jumped in price, and he had to spend the money or give it to the government. So he hired me to make all this, whatever I wanted to do. It's a pretty good job. And I built him a great big desk with fish on the front of it and all kinds of, big oak fancy thing. And all of the stuff that was left over was laying around in the garage where I was working, And I was hanging around with this woman that had a couple of little kids. And I used to take them out to the lake and go fishing with them. And that's where the old Hoover fish came from.
We're going to get to old Hoover.
Yeah, we'll get to that eventually here. But anyway, the rubber band machine gun was during that era, and it was a little boy, Ryan was his name. His carving is on the front of the gun. If there's a little boy with, that's a little relief or a 3D carving of him. And he asked me one day, I made him a little hand rubber shooter, and he said, "Can you make me a rubber band machine gun?" I said, "Yeah, I could do that." I liked him. He was a good guy, And I regretted that, but anyway, about 5 or 6 months later, when I got it as far done as I got it, I could have kept going on it, but it was, you just run out of time on these things.
Looks pretty finished to me. Now, there's a part on there from the old Smith Hobson house, right? When you were helping turn it into City Hall?
Yeah, I worked on the City Hall, and the piece of bronze on the front of the barrel is one of the light fixtures from the old Smith Hobson house over there.
See, we combine history and art here at the Ojai Valley Museum whenever we can. Moving on to old Hoover, since you mentioned him. Those of you who have seen the exhibit in the left, unfortunately, old Hoover is no longer with us, neither one of them. But if you go to the website, we have I think a 30-second snippet of video. You can actually see old Hoover 2, I think it is, in the Ojai, the 4th of July parade one year before its unfortunate demise. Anyway, what was the origin of old Hoover?
Well, these 2 young boys that I had charge of once in a while, I used to take them out to Lake Casitas to let them burn off a little energy, and they used to go out there and dump big loads of trout into the lake for people to fish out of. And we were out there and we saw them. We thought, hey, there's an easy way to get a few fish. Let's ease over there, big school of them swimming around. And we're standing there trying to fish, and all of a sudden it looked like a car fender. The nose of this thing looked like an old car fender came up and gulped down a whole trout. And these are big trouts, these are pretty good sized fish. I said, my gosh, there's a monster fish in here, And, the little boys loved that. Oh, there's a monster? And so, you know how it goes. You just kind of ease off into these things, and pretty soon you're tilling a big whopper. And anyway, he worked up this story about the whole thing, and I actually wrote 2 or 3 different versions of the story of old Hoover, and never did get them completely done. And these boys, we had a little falling out with the mother, and she, so I wasn't around the boys anymore. And when I got out in the world again, I got to thinking, well, I should, Olympics came to town, 1984, and so we did this big talked it up real big about building a monster, the monster of Lake Casitas for the Olympic Games, you know. And you get to talking real big, and then you have to do it, you know.
This is with Rick Doramus?
No, this is the first one.
First one.
Well, he actually worked on the first one too.
Okay.
Rick Doramus was an airplane mechanic. He was a wonder maker, interesting man, kind of grumpy. You know, the reason he was grumpy is because everything he worked on, people would die if it didn't work right, you know? And so he was very touchy about how he made things. And being an airplane mechanic, but anyway, he was a lot to work with, you know? But we built this great big fish, and Laura Brown, I don't know if any of you know Laura Brown, but she was very instrumental in getting all the women together with kids to make hats to wear in the parade and everything. And we built a great big old fish and drove it tall, you know, took it to the fair parade and the Ojai parade, and that was the first fish. And then we had so much fun with that, we thought, why don't we just build a really nice one, you know? So we did. And it got to go, you know, 2 or 3 years. It went all over. Went to Santa Barbara, Camarillo, Santa Paula.
He drove it there.
Yeah,
I have this wonderful image of you're going to fish at Lake Casitas, and you're going the other way on 150. And you go around a bend.
We did.
And, you know, you give up drinking at that point because...
Did you see that?
Was there a police-related incident with that fish?
Well, yes. So we did have a little problem with the police driving it around. We were coming back from Camarillo, and you get over there, and everybody wants to look at it and talk to you, you know. And it's wintertime. It's like December, and the days are really short, you know. And pretty soon, you know, the sun is getting down low in the sky, and we've got to drive all the way to Ojai with this fish, you know. And I'm thinking, at about 25 miles an hour, if that, you know. And so we ease off down the road, get going, you know, and pretty soon it's getting dark. And we did have a car in front, but we didn't have anybody in back, you know. So pretty soon I'm driving, and the whole inside of the fish turns red. And I think, wow, look at that. And I pulled over, and the cop walked up to the front of the fish like he was going to talk to the fish, you know. And I said, I'm way back here in the back. What do you need? He says, have you got any lights on this thing? And I said, I got a tail, but I don't have any tail lights. And he said, he looked at me real funny you couldn't hardly see me because I was inside, but he looked at me funny and he says, I'll just follow you in. That was nice.
So I think you told me you spent 7 months, you and Rick, but he's a retiree, right? You were just doing it for the thrill of it. 7 months?
7 months.
No one's paying you to do this. You just did it. And then you spent your last $5 to put gas in it so you could drive it through the
Ojai parade. Yep.
If you haven't seen this fish, who remembers it? I never saw it. It was gone. Okay.
My gosh,
It looks, for those of you who didn't see it, look at the picture at the back. It is not an abstract. It's a largemouth bass. It's magnificent. You can't believe it. You guys did an incredible job. And it emitted soap bubbles through the gills.
Yeah.
Right? And it wagged its tail.
Yeah, it had a air compressor. It had a Volkswagen engine in the front, and then it had an extra pulley put on, and we ran an air compressor off of the pulley. So we had air pressure, and then you get tire pumps with bungee cords, and you can blow it out, and the bungee cord pulls it back. So you have two-way action, and you could do anything you wanted with two-way action. So you could wag the tail, you could, you know, open the gills. You know, it was an amazing thing.
40 feet long, 10 feet tall, 14 feet tall, 10 feet wide. 40 feet long, 10 feet, 14 feet tall, and the mouth opened and shut, right?
Yeah.
And it was chasing your brother in a frog costume on a bicycle, is that right?
Yeah. Well, the first one was chasing all the little kids with their little minnow hats and things, you know. But it was too, you know, the logistics of getting all these little kids all over the county was just too much, you know. So we switched to this frog on a bicycle.
And, the foot is over there on the wall when you...
Yeah, that's part of the outfit. And put a bubble machine on the bicycle that stuck off of one side. And when you pedaled it, it would leave a great big trail of bubbles all along, and you chase the trail of bubbles with the fish.
Why the name Old Hoover?
She sucks like a vacuum cleaner.
This is a family museum, Dennis.
Well, I know, but that's how fish eat. They open their mouth and they pull everything in, And so that was what was the reason for it, was the name of Old Hoover, because it was like a vacuum cleaner. She
And
cleaned the lake,
There's a painting of it as well, or her. Over there in the Old Hoover corner. Now, how did you, again, self-taught, you do acrylics mostly. How did you get into that, and what was the process?
That's a really good question. You get in there and you start futzing around with these things, and you realize that all of it is pretty simple. It's not rocket science. You just working on a bigger scale. When I was building the mock-up for that thing back there, the mouth of the fish is just this little wire thing that comes around. When we got that fish done, that thing weighed 250 pounds. And when it came down, you better not be underneath it. It was a pretty good sized thing. And you have to lift it up, and you have to make it so if it does hit somebody, it won't hurt them. You're talking about, working in parades. I don't know if anybody of you guys ever done any parade work, but here in Ojai, the horse with a buggy got loose and tore off through all the fancy cars and almost ran right through the Boy Scouts. It hooked a fender on something and stopped the wagon before it went. So, and you can cause this to happen by driving by in your big fish. So
It must have been someone else in his fish.
I know if you haven't driven a big fish around, you won't know what these problems are, but there are some serious problems. On the way to Santa Paula one time, we were going across, and the horses I think it was up on Mountain Lion Road up there. We're driving along, and the horses just took off running when they saw this big fish go by. And I'm driving, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And they jumped the fence on the other end of the field and kept going, and I'm going, oh my God. So I had to stop and take the eyeballs off. And once I got the eyeballs off of it, it wasn't a problem,
I'm not sure. I think I'd find it scarier without its eyes, but... So, painting. All right, we have not only Old Hoover, of course, your ever popular smudge pot bears on this side, which can be bought as a print over at the Tartaglia Fine Arts. Why acrylics? And why painting at all as opposed to everything else you do, and why acrylics?
Well, now, Teal Rowe, who's here tonight, I was, telling her about my grandmother has a painting class in Santa Barbara, and she, it's like on one day a week, and it's like Thursday afternoon, and she looks at me and she goes, your grandmother has a painting class in Santa Barbara, and you're not in the class? And I went, my God, you're right. I should be there, So we started going to my grandmother's class. Gail Childress went to it with it too, and Grandma loved all of these silly. I painted the door to the unknown in there, and all these ladies, I don't know they're painting pictures of flowers and things, And here I am painting this big door with a door to the unknown written on the front. And they come up behind me and look and go, oh, he's one of those.
So acrylics? I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Why
okay, acrylics. My grandmother.
I have a technical question for the artists here.
My grandmother gave me a whole set. She had a painting class, and it cost $5, and you get a box of all the colors and a piece of canvas when you went to her class. And when I went to her class the first time, she gave me a whole set of acrylics and some canvases and said, here you go. And I started painting in color with acrylics after she did that. And that's where old Hoover came from. That old Hoover picture was painted here in Ojai. It was painted at Teal Rose House in her, we used to be a garage up on the, up on the mesa up there. And that was done with grandma's, all of these things, they've got to have a little juju in them, and most of this stuff is grandmother's acrylics.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. The one in the corner there, what story is it telling, with the snails?
The snails, I was growing zinnias. Now, I thought I was, a flower grower there for a while. And I was growing zinnias, and they were really looking nice, middle of the summer. And I came out one morning and looked, and that scene was going on in my zinnias. There's a snail had climbed up and was on its way down, and he wasn't even down to where he wanted to be yet, and his buddies were eating the flower at the end of it. And I was so mad because it was my favorite plant that I kicked the snails all over the place. And then I stopped and went, Dennis, you idiot, why didn't you take a picture of that? That was an amazing thing to see. And so I painted it. It's about 2 months worth of wasted time.
Right, we're sitting in the middle of 70 years worth of
Wasted time.
not so it seems. Also, all these paintings tell stories. Everything you do tells a story, as you said. Is something you have a philosophy of that, or just the way you go about things?
Well, yeah, I think that I'm motivated by stuff like that. I feel like I've always loved storytellers, in song and painting and, and in writing. Even in writing, it's a great thing to play around with and tell a story compared to just painting a picture of something. You tell a story. Now, those bears at the table, in the Last Supper back there. Now, you can just imagine the noise would come out of something like that.
Yeah, you see what's going to happen next. It's not a frozen tableau. Sculpture. You do a lot of. We're sitting in front of. We'll get to the story of the Rhino who's missing his charge card. Well,
Yeah.
Dennis put a charge card on there, so he says that's when you know it's going to charge. Somebody took it.
Somebody stole it. It was
Eric-
AARP or something, it really wasn't.
Yeah, it was an art critic of some sort.
Yeah.
Anyway, so sculpture, you've got that soapstone, right? But is there any particular rhyme or reason to your medium, or?
Not really. You play around with, drawing, and then you turn them into, we got to building that big bear out in front was done down at Roger Imberry's Rock and Water place. We did probably 5 or 6. I was going to build a sleeping animal park. All the animals would be asleep. And the bear was one of the first pieces. And you're working with a precast rock, and then you take styrofoam and pile it up on top of it, and then take a bread knife and carve it into something close to a bear. And then you take drywall mud, and you put the drywall mud over it, and put the hair on and all the stuff with the drywall mud. And pretty soon you're making bears, That's what this is over here, too. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. This is made out of styrofoam, and it's got drywall mud on it, and I can pick it up by myself. It's light as a feather, and it's really a nice medium. They use it in parade floats and stuff a lot on the Rose Parade. The moon is done like that too. But sculpting, it lends itself to that kind of thing. You get in and you can build and you can make things turn and look and do. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. I don't know what you do with it. I just played with it, I haven't, tried to do anything. Well, actually, I have tried to do a bunch of things, but by the time you get it up into the politics of trying to please everybody, it's not much fun, It turns into a great big job, and this kind of work, it's supposed to be interesting and fun for you, and if it turns into a job, you probably aren't going to get it done, So what my story is.
One of your sculptures, which is very familiar to everyone in Ojai, but not everyone knows it was you, is the lion's head fountain. Could you tell us a story about how that came about?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. Nancy Bradley's, I think her father saved when they were taking down the old pergola, her father saved the sandstone carvings that were in it and put them in his garage someplace here in Ojai, and they had them there for a long time. And when they started redoing the pergola, David Mason and all the stuff that went along with it, they got them back out again and gave them back to the city, and they built them into the wall down here. And after a while, they had a water pipe going through the middle of it, and the water pipe was leaking, and it got into the sandstone, and it just started falling apart. And so they got a hold of Roger Imberry to rebuild the thing. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I need you to come over and sculpt this back into a lion again, because the eye and the whole side of the face had fallen off." So I came over and helped.
I think we have the original outside in the off our patio here in the Chumash garden, but the one that you see as you drive by every day is a Dennis Shives. Now, you also did something similar for the lions at the entrance to Foster Park, right?
Yeah, they moved those big pillars down there years ago when they raised the bridge. It was really interesting to be down there working on that thing, because the old timers from Foster Park would come down there and talk to me, while I was working on it. And this one guy comes down, he goes, "My dad blew that bridge up." And I thought, well, that's not very nice, but why did he do that? And he said, well, in 1933, I'm not sure about the date, but I think that's what he said. He said there was a huge rain, and it didn't flood the Sespe. It just flooded the Ventura River. And it came down the river, and oak trees were rolling down, whole oak trees are rolling down the river. And they all stacked up against that bridge and turned it into a dam. And back those days, you could buy dynamite at the hardware store. I don't know if you knew that. And it was cheap. And so a lot of people they would blow stumps up. I'm sure it was not very fun to live next door to somebody blowing stumps up, but who knows. But anyway, this guy had dynamite, and he went over there and blew the bridge up and broke the dam and saved the town. And I thought, I didn't even want to know that.
The things you learn. Well, anyone needs a lion facelift to experience. So I think Tarzan has something to do with it. What's the story with the charging rhino?
Well, I made one of these for Denny Miller years ago. And he had it behind his, wait a minute, I'm going to get out of the way here. And he had it behind his front door. And when you opened the door, it was, we were going to try and put it on the front door, but it weighs about 250, almost 300 pounds. So if you got your finger in it, when you close the door, it'd take it right off. So it was, you can't have doors that heavy. So we put it behind the door, so when you open the door, here's this charging rhino coming at you. And this one, I liked it so much, I thought, well, I should make another one of those. I don't know what I'll do with it, but... And all the wood of this thing is all from Thatcher School. These are from the old buildings that they tore down up there. These big planks are all straight grain redwood, and this is all stuff from the old pergola up there. And it's been all reused, and it's got some history. And it makes it interesting, because I'm working with stuff that has juju. It's got a life to it.
Like that bronze fixture on the Gatling gun. Well, of all you do so many different mediums. Do you have a favorite, or will you admit to one?
I like writing now.
You can make a good living at that.
Well, it's kind of fun to write, because you're painting with words, and you're describing, and I've really had a lot of fun with it here lately. But I still like everything. I don't know. I just got done with a couple of paintings. I've been playing around with gold leaf stuff.
And you used to do gold jewelry back in the day?
Yeah, I used to make gold rings and jewelry and bracelets and necklaces and cast all the pieces and stuff. I've worked in that.
Magic wands too, especially?
Well, yeah, I've been known to make a few magic wands too. And each one of them, I don't know, you guys probably know this, but all of the wands in there have got something inside of each one of them. Each one has a piece of grizzly bear hair or a tooth of a porpoise or a hummingbird chest feather. One of those bright red feathers will be inside of it. Just little things that give it some magic, And I've had some interesting clients with those things. People who have big educations, doctors, lawyers, they go, well, we've got all this other stuff going, but, you can't be too safe. Let's get one of these too.
Can't hurt. One of your artworks that we couldn't possibly transport here is a house that you did in Alaska for, who was it, Hugh Estill?
Hugh Estill, or Jack Estill, actually, Jack.
How did that come about? How'd you get to Alaska building a house?
Well, Jack Estill was quite a character in his own right, but he was fishing up there one time, and he had a captain's license, and he drove this boat, this landing craft for this guy. He wasn't the owner, he was working for somebody, and he got back from fishing one time, and he had a $25,000 crew share check with him. He was going to the bank, and the guy caught him before he got in the bank and said, are you interested in buying that boat you've been driving for me? And he said, well, yeah, how much is it? And he said, $25,000. So he signed the back of it, handed it to the guy. 2 weeks later, the Valdez hit the rock. Exxon came to town, hired every boat in the whole state to work on the oil spill. Jack got the Ray Malee in there, and he made about $750,000 the first summer working on that thing. And he called up and said, Dennis, I'm going to build a house. And I thought, well, sounds like you can. I think I'll come up and give you a hand. So I went up to Alaska for several times. Through the 90s, it was like 1990 to about 1998. I was up there, in and out of there, and trying to get this house built. And in Alaska, I don't know if anybody's been to Alaska, but there's not enough people to work for all the work that's going on. So he would come and get me in the middle. I'd be, trying to get something done, and I'd see the boat coming into the harbor, Dennis, come on, you got to go with us. We need an extra hand for the crew. You have to have so many people on the boat to run it. And so they dragged me off across Cook Inlet over to where the big bears are fishing and out onto the Aleutian chain and all different kinds of places, and just seasick and, but you get there and it's the most beautiful place you ever saw, And there's, it's wild and you have to be careful with everything you do. There's giant grizzly bears walking around, and you just get addicted to the magic of the place, It was a fun job.
Is the house still there? Do you know it?
Yeah, the house is still there. So one of the family members is still living in it. It had a round front porch, a big curved front porch, and you could catch king salmon off the porch. You could stand right on the porch and just cast out and catch great big fish.
Another original Dennis Shives. Since you mentioned Alaska's natural beauty, you're also a self-taught naturalist. Or, how did that develop? The barefoot walking in Horn Canyon. Yeah. Dispensing of wisdoms thing.
Yeah.
Tell us your secret.
Well, I don't have any secrets, but recently my favorite thing to do is to go watch the bears. Now, in the morning, if you get up real early in the morning, you can go and watch the bears. They've been down shopping, going through the trash. They've been helping with the trash. And they get done about daylight, and they all start back up the hill, and you can and you get to know everybody. There's a great big male, and there's another. He's a kind of a wannabe male. He's a big guy, a great big, long, skinny guy. He's probably 300-pounder, but he's 7 feet tall. He's a great big, tall, long, lanky guy. And then there's 2 or 3 females with 4, 3, 2, cubs each. And it's a little family of people that it changes around too periodically. They'll go to the next canyon, or they'll go down someplace else, and pretty soon, you see them back in there again. Bears are kind of funny, though. It's hard to tell who's who, because they're all brown. Except the big males. You can tell the big males pretty easily. But you get up there and play with these things, and it's an amazing place. Ojai has got some real history, and one side of the valley is from a whole nother era than the other side. The Black Mountain side of this thing has got Ice Age, 12,000-year-old bones and stuff on it. And this side of the valley has got stone bones that are millions of years old. I mean, millions and millions of years old. And they're coming out of the rock. And I used to go up and dig dinosaurs up in South Dakota in the summertime. And you get a feel for what things are. That they all have all the same bones you do. You can tell the fingers of them. You can tell the leg bones. And when you come back down here, this stuff is here too. It's all over the place. But you just got to know what you're looking at, because it's all made out of stone instead of actual bone. It's turned to stone.
Your friend Sergio Aragones did a great cartoon where he's walking along in front of you saying, "Forget it, Dennis, it's just a stone," and you're picking a stone up, and underneath it's an entire Triceratops or something. So why bare feet? Why do you hike barefoot?
Well, because I go too fast. I think we all go too fast. If you want to look at things and really see what's going on, you got to slow down. You got to, slow down. And if you got shoes on, when I wore shoes, I'd be, up on the ridge in no time, And you don't see anything when you're going that fast. You're just going. And I found that I was missing a lot of things by doing such things. So I started going barefooted to make myself slow down, And I wouldn't suggest it to everybody. It's, but you have to kind of keep them up. Your feet will get soft if you don't use them a lot. You wear shoes. These are killing me, by the way. But if you wear shoes, your feet sweat and they get soft. And so you have to work at it I go walking every day barefooted. And I don't do it just to be a barefoot walker. I do it because one of the things is to be quiet. You can be quiet. You can't be that quiet when you wear a pair of shoes. You can actually walk right up behind an animal. As a matter of fact, I've done it several times. I didn't even mean to. They're, ahead of me, and you come around the corner and they're right there, and they didn't hear you. And if you wore shoes, you would have never seen them. And it's pretty exciting. It's pretty interesting stuff to do.
And it leads to, you create art as you do it, don't you? I mean, the faces you find with the...
Playing with the rock. Well, that's another thing that you're working with. I don't know, you noticed in the front of the museum, all of the little faces in the stones. But when you're going slow, you look down and you go, that looks an awful lot like a face. Look, there's a smile in that rock, and you get a couple more rocks, put a couple eyes on it, get some leaves and kind of sprinkle some hair around the top of it, take a picture of it. And I've got a great collection I think I might even make a book out of it, making faces of all these silly things that you run into that you don't know what else to do with. What do you do?
Then you disassemble them and leave them for someone else to...
I just disassemble them. I don't leave them there because it's a form of graffiti, But it's really a lot of fun with a camera. These cameras nowadays, you can walk up to things and just take a picture of it, build something. I've been building wreaths with dry leaves and stuff. There's some really beautiful leaves right now. They're in between in the crossing from yellow to red, changing colors. And you can lay them out in these big circles and put stuff in the middle of them and then just take a photograph of them and just kick them out of the way. And it's fascinating to me, all the things to work with around us.
Speaking of temporary art that you take a picture of and then it goes away, how did you get into sandcastle sculpting?
we went down, we drove old Hoover to the beach one day.
I knew Hoover would somehow be involved in this.
My van wasn't running very good, so I took the fish. Anyway, we got down, it was like, the Ventura Marina thing down there, and there was some kind of a big thing, going on, save the whales or something. And in the process of it, they said there's a sand sculpture contest too, and so I was down there with Dennis Smith, who was a sculptor from Ventura. He made the big steel people. I don't know if you ever saw down on Seward Avenue back in the old days. He had several of them down there. He built a war memorial park up behind Mount Shasta, and he's there. As a matter of fact, yesterday was a big day because they do, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, all those kind of things. Huge crowds of people come to this thing. But anyway, we went down to this thing and we decided we'd build us a sand sculpture, So we got in there and built a great big frog and didn't really think much about it, and everybody got all the awards and stuff, and at the very end they said, and the grand champion is us. And I thought, wow, we won? That's the first one we ever did, and I was hooked.
And yeah, he's got a shelf full of first place awards. He's famous for sand sculpture. And you make your own tools, and they're works of art, and we have them out front. How did you come across the need to do that?
Well, when you're making things that have hair on them or scales or something, you think about, this is a lot of work to put all these scales on here. I'm going to have to make something that does something with it. And I think the first thing I made was just lumps. Just you take a drill and drill holes down into the thing. And when you're building dinosaurs and stuff, it works great for their skin. You can just roll the hide on. And in half of the time, maybe less than half of the time, I can have a real looking piece, because I have those rollers. You just roll, you just rough it in and then roll it. And people are working 2 hours longer than you are and not getting the detail that those silly things do, And it's just logical, it's like it just makes sense to do such a thing. And you also have to have the time to do it. You have to stop and go, okay, we have to make scales for the mermaid. Okay, we can do that.
Of course, these are ephemeral pieces of art. They're gone in a couple hours. You take a picture and let it go, I suppose. I mean, how is that easier to embrace because it has to disappear within hours, or?
Well, the reason I like it is because you can work you can make great big things relatively quickly, and you can get into the sculpt. You can make things on a huge scale. I'm surprised more people don't get in and do it because it's an excellent material. You just put a little water on the sand and it stands up, and you can make just about anything. Some of the people that I've worked with, they, stack it up. They put plastic swimming pools together and stack the sand up and start at the top and work their way down, work 2 or 3 days on something, But I don't do that. I worked on one a couple of times, and I think it's too fanatical for me. I'm not interested in that. I like about a 3 hour, 2.5, 3 hour, I'm out of energy by then.
Helen Alawar is a fan of yours, and Dana Tartaglia, you're in her gallery at the moment. You haven't actually made yourself wealthy in the course of all this art. How do you view the process of an art career to the extent that you've pursued it, and how has that worked? Or how
it actually doesn't work. But you get, you have to. Well, if you stand around in the art business, if you stand around and worry about how long you're spending working on something, you're not going to have very much fun. It takes the joy out of the whole thing. Some of these things, this piece right here is probably 5-6 weeks of work, and that's a lot of time spent, and you have to do other things besides. It's not all just working on art. You do this and you do other things to make money, and you kind of sneak all this stuff into your life, and then people, it's like, when you manufacture things, the value, the price of them can go way down because you're making several of them. But when you're just making one piece, they're pretty valuable. You know, they're not like $10,000, they're many $1,000s. And you have to go chase this stuff all down. It's a whole nother thing to go get involved with people who want to buy expensive stuff, you know? And that's no fun. So you just put it in the bag, throw a sheet over the top of it, and hope for the best. One of these days, somebody's going to let you go to the museum and put it all in there.
It might happen someday. You never know.
You never know.
Let me read you back a quote from this Ojai Quarterly article. The process is all about, what it is all about is learning not to be afraid. Fear is the biggest killer of creativity. Why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Well, fear, you know, I'm actually motivated by fear. You know, when you don't know how something works, I'm curious. I just have this terrible, you know, will to learn things from stuff, you know. And so the fear is actually a tool that you use to make things. You figure out how all these things work, and you can't have it as the goal to be rich or something, because it doesn't work like that. I think it comes later when you're working with this stuff. When you get to a point where you can do this, where you can have a whole show of all these things, you get a spectrum, a big broad spectrum, and it probably won't work either. But, you know, we're hoping for the best.
Stay positive. Well, I think it's time that, anybody want to hear Dennis read a story from his new book? Have we got a copy, Lori? Handy?
Has anybody got a copy of it? I don't have one.
By the way, we have both the new book and the old book for sale in front. And we're going to get a copy right now. Now, this book just came out, am I right?
Yeah.
Hot off the presses.
Yes, it's pretty hot off the press.
How long have you been working on it?
Oh gosh, a year and a half, 2 years. But it just came out with the show. It came out, you know, just before the show opened. Sonia got it. I don't know how she did it, but she got it. Got her done.
Sonia Nordenson, right? Sonia
Yeah,
tonight?
Nordenson.
Take a hand? No? All right.
I don't think she's here tonight. I haven't seen her.
Here comes a copy.
Here comes a copy.
Hot off the presses.
Either one.
And after he reads, we'll take some questions.
Let me get my eyes on here. Let me see here.
Do you have books? Are both books on your lap?
Yes. Well, you have a request?
Yeah. The bull standing on the post.
Okay.
The golden oldie.
It's called The Trespass. Somewhere in the great rolling badlands of eastern Nevada, I came upon a fence in the middle of nowhere. I stood for a long time in front of it, in its no trespassing sign, trying to decide who that was posted for. It couldn't have been me. I'm a nice guy. I don't steal things. I'm great company, quiet, easygoing. I love to explore lonely places. The sign must have been meant for someone else. I got down on my hands and knees and crawled under the fence. I was barefoot, wearing shorts, no shirt, carrying a stick with a carved frog on the top. I could see for 5 miles in every direction, and there was not a ranch house in sight, not a soul around, just this fence with a sign for someone else. I headed into the great unknown. In the distance, I could see a gulch lined with cottonwoods, and that's where I headed. Maybe I'd find a creek with some water. Sagebrush was about waist high and filled with game trails. I moved easily along, looking at animal tracks in the soft soil. I remember daydreaming and listening to the birds. About a quarter mile from the fence, I first heard something big running. The sound was far away, but it seemed to be getting closer. I could hear something crashing through the brush, and then heavy breathing. What was coming was really moving. I began to look around for a tree or a pile of rocks to get up on so I could see, but there was nothing but sagebrush. The river was still a long ways off. I was running down the trail now, looking over my shoulder. Finally, I saw the beast coming after me at full speed. It was a teenage black bull, weighing probably 1,000 pounds, with his head down, his sharp pointed horns coming along. He appeared to be a wild Spanish bull, the kind that still run at Papaloma, and he was gaining on me. Then I saw it, my salvation. Sticking up about 4 feet above the ground, just above the sagebrush, was a cut-off stump of a telephone pole, about 1 foot thick. I don't know how I got up on it, but there I was on top of it just as that bull caught up with me. I stood there like a cornered bobcat while the bull put on his brakes and tried to figure out what to do next. I remember thinking, thank the spirits it's not a bear. The bull horned my cedar pole several times, but when he put his head down to charge, his horn struck lower than where my bare feet were perched. The force did shake the pole, but lucky for me, I had my frog stick to help me keep my balance. He ran around me several times, snorting and stomping, and then just stood back and watched. It was looking to be a long, hot day. The bull wandered around for a while, coming back to check on me 2 or 3 times. It's hard to look casual while balancing on a stump of a telephone pole, but I did my best, trying not to antagonize him. Then he turned away from me with his ears perked up. I guess he heard something else, because he took off at a dead run. I listened to his hoofbeats going away for a minute that seemed like about an hour. Then I climbed down and headed for the fence. When I got back safely on the other side, I decided that maybe that no trespassing sign did mean me.
I think we want to hear one from the new book, and then we'll take a question or two. Golden oldies are good, but let's hear something hot off the presses.
Let's see here. Let's see. Torchy. Just a minute, I'm going to bang the thing around a little bit. I have to get my eyes back on. It was so very long ago that I nearly forgot. I was once a cowboy. My uncle lent us a cow so we kids could have fresh milk. Torchy was a beautiful Guernsey with big brown eyes. We already had 3 goats, a pig, and some chickens. My brother was the first cowboy, but he discovered football and girls, so he decided it was time to teach me how to be a cowboy. He made it sound so good I could see myself riding the range. Then, in almost no time at all, he made me a cowboy. When I got home from school, I had a snack, ignored my homework, and went out and did my chores. I fed the chickens, gathered the eggs, tended the 3 goats, went around the neighborhood gathering people's food scraps for the pig, and then I milked the cow. It sounds like a lot of work every day, but I kind of liked it. I always got along well with animals. We must think the same way. Also, no one bothers you when you're doing chores. When I was in the house, everybody was older and smarter than me. There was always somebody telling me what to do. But when I got out back, they left me alone. There was a lot more to being a cowboy than I thought. I weighed about 65 pounds, and Torchy was pushing a ton. She was kind and gentle, but she was certainly the boss. Most of the time, I could get her to do what I wanted with a bribe, a little alfalfa hay or some molasses grain, and she would walk down to the barn to be milked. We developed a nice, trusting relationship. Sometimes when there wasn't enough money for feed, I had to go down into our neighbor's lemon orchard with a bread knife and cut grass to feed my cow. She liked that. But cutting hay and hauling it home took too much time. So one day I decided to quit taking the hay to the cow and take the cow to the hay. I tied a rope around Torchy's neck and opened the gate. Off we went, she dragging me down the road like I wasn't even there. When she finally stopped to eat, I realized we were totally out of control. To keep from losing her altogether, I climbed a nearby cement irrigation standpipe and that got me up high enough to jump on her back. Wow, what a view. But her back was like sitting on a picket fence. Still, I stayed on as Torchy wandered around for a couple of hours eating tall grass, until finally she was full. I jumped down and led Torchy back to her pasture. After that, I felt like a real cowboy. Why go to all the expense and trouble to train a horse when I could just ride my cow? I never did get a hat.
It's not too late. So, who's got a question for Dennis? Paula.
Not a question, but dear old Hoover ruined the 4th of July parades for me because she was in the very first one I ever saw, and I've been waiting for her ever since. All sirens and flashing lights.
Oh, oh, that's too bad.
Question is, what became of
Old Hoover, somebody wanted to buy her years ago. Somebody actually came up and said, I'll give you $1,000 for Old Hoover. And I was thinking, let's see, 7 months of work, $1,000. No, that's not gonna, that just sticks in my craw. Anyway, it wound up sitting in the backyard, and the wind and the sun beating down on it was made out of gross screen, and it just started to fall apart. And when it got to a certain point, we just tore it apart and gave all the parts back to the people we got them from, and it was over. It was all done. But we got to do it. It was really an amazing thing to get to do. I suggest it to anybody who wants to be miserable for several months.
We all need some advice on how to do that. And again, go to the website, the museum website, and you can watch a video of Old Hoover in action. Old Hoover 2, I think it is.
Yeah, that's Old Hoover 2.
Any other questions or comments for Dennis? Barbara.
Dennis, you should tell a little story about your famous Volkswagen bus.
Oh, yes.
That history, like, you don't have to feel my part.
How many miles? How many
Well, you're a
miles?
big part of it, Barbara. I built a store in Beverly Hills for Barbara, and as a final gesture, she gave me the van that I had an old truck, and it was 45 miles an hour on the freeway hauling stuff, and she said, why don't you use the van? It's a little faster, and it'll, you're down in Los Angeles, and it's dangerous to drive an old truck, So she gave it to me when we got done with that job, and that was such a hard job. I thought, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this thing. And I almost sold it one time. Somebody came to one of my shows and said, I almost bought that van from you. And I remember that I had it for sale one time, and when the guy actually wanted to buy it from me, I remember going, God, I've had so much fun in that car. I just can't sell it.
How many miles has it got on it, Dennis?
It's got I've had it now for 47 years, and it's got 1,008,040 something miles on it now. 11 engines.
11 engines, one chassis.
Yeah, and it's been everywhere. It's been up in the digging dinosaurs and all over making sand sculptures and traveling and hanging around out in the desert. And it's just been a wonderful old machine to, travel and go, wander around in. It's one of those kind of things. It's anymore, I'll tell you, the speed of everything, how fast everybody's going these days, it's almost a hazard to drive it around. But I feel like I'm doing my part, slowing down the traffic.
You never painted it though. A lot of people painted their VW vans.
Well, I was going to paint a picture of a polar bear on the outside of it, and then I thought, it draws attention to these things. It's bad enough with all the stuff on the dashboard. I get back from walking sometimes, there'll be a crowd of people standing around the front of my car looking in the dashboard at all the junk, So, and I usually try to park so it doesn't show, in places, but if you make a car like that stick out too much, you just want a white old clunker, and keep a good engine in it and keep the brakes working and keep everything going, but just something real simple. And people appreciate it too when you go places in it, they'll talk to you easier. They come up to you and they wonder, why, you poor guy, what's going on with you?
You're partial to VW engines, right? Because you put them in all your fish.
Yes, well, a VW engine is a great thing. It's something you can actually fix, You can figure out how the motor works. You can do amazing things. I took the engine out in the desert. I've got a cottonwood pole and some rocks and dropped the engine and pulled the head off and hitchhiked to town and ordered a head and got it there. They had one in the next town and somebody drove it over. And by the evening, I was out there putting the head back on the engine, and I picked it back up again, stacked rocks under it, got it up and pushed it back in and tightened the bolts up and drove away. And that's a good feeling. When you can fix your car in the desert, you're pretty brave. There's nothing scares you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm wondering if every piece of sculpture you got has a story about the material and where you pulled it from, because it seems like most of it.
It does. I've been through it about 5 times now. I took the 7th grade Ojai Valley school kids through it the other day.
Okay.
I got done and I couldn't even talk. I ran out of words. But they loved it. It was amazing to do.
You want to pick one and he'll tell you that one? Pick one.
Yeah, pick one.
About the airplane prop.
The airplane propeller. That came from the old Hoover era. Rick DeRamus at Santa Paula Airport had access to these things. These things came back from World War II to Port Hueneme. They brought in a whole bunch of surplus stuff and sold them to the ranchers around here. The ranchers wanted it for wind machines. And they had diesel air-cooled engines from tanks, and they had these propellers, and you could buy this stuff and put them up on a tower and have a wind machine to, keep the orchards from freezing. And these things ran for a long time. Finally, some smart mechanic said, it's just too much trouble to climb up this ladder and work on this machine up 25 feet in the air. Why don't we put the engine on the ground and run a thing up to it and spin it with that, And everybody said, hey, that's a great idea. So instantly, all of these things were obsolete. And so they're laying around everywhere, and that's how I got that. The Limonera Ranch had 30 or 40 of them laying around, and they were going to throw them in the dump. And that's a 10-footer. That is a big prop. And the reason the military quit using them is because they're wooden. They're 5 layers of white maple, and when you're near the ocean, they fill up with water at night whenever it gets foggy, and makes the propeller out of balance. So when you start the airplane, it goes, and so they switched them all off into aluminum and threw them all away. And that's how I got that.
What about what got you into making these mobile, sort of steampunk-looking inventions of yours? We have them here in front of the blue wall.
Oh, the bubble machines?
Bubble machines, yeah.
Bubble machines, well.
Well, some of them make music, don't they?
Well, no, none of those do. I have a toy that's called a Meadow Dancer that's got a music box and a little pinwheel propeller on the front of it and a megaphone on the bottom of it that you can swing it around and play music. But, I played with all kinds of inventions. These things are really fun to set up. When you go to do sand sculptures, you get out there and early in the morning. I don't do it anymore. It's too much, When those things get going, it fills the whole world with bubbles, and and all the kids go completely crazy, and, you know, you just go, God, turn that thing off, we're gonna get killed. But I made all different kinds of them. I used to work with John Cuccio, who was a famous bubble guy around here. He had the, what was it called, the Bubble Bee, and several other inventions, and he got me going on bubbles, you know. And so I've just had a great old time with them, too.
Mark, is your belt buckle one of yours or Dwayne's?
Oh, that's one of mine.
One of yours, and what, is it bone?
Yeah, it's made out of the base of an elk horn from Utah.
Use the mic, please.
Use the mic? I'm sorry. Well, it keeps ringing on me, you know. I think it's up a little louder than what I would like.
So do you hunt, or do you
No,
scavenge?
no. I have hunted, though. I hunted in Alaska. In Alaska, there's no supermarket. So, you know, you're kind of, you know, do you want to eat or not? Well, okay. Well, let me see what this thing will do, you know.
Could you give us a little history on this table over here that looks like icebergs?
It's a desk.
That's a desk. That's called the Desk of the Mountain Dreamer. And that was made at Thatcher School as a demonstration for the wood class up there. Me and John Boetti put that together. And it's got some famous wood in it too. The wood in the mountains is all made out of a picnic table from Carl McDougall's backyard. Now, I don't know if you guys know who Carl McDougall was, but he was a fantastic guy, and he made police badges, and he made, you know, just made all sorts of silly things. And he had a little place down where the Airstream Trailer Park is now on Bryant Street. You're in that little area right there. And they were going to throw that that table away, and I said, don't throw that away. I'm going to use that in our new desk. So that's all straight grain redwood, and it's a lenticular cloud. It's not an iceberg. It's a lenticular cloud with the peaks of the mountains sticking through the top of the cloud. And it has a light underneath it. It's, if you turn the lights down in the room, it glows underneath. It's really a beautiful, it's best in the dark, but it's not plugged in right now. That's, you know. But, well, they were worried about people tripping over the cord because the cord comes along this wall, you know. There's a lot to know about museums, you know. You think, oh, just bring all the stuff in.
Yes, it's a
Not a
high-pressure
chance.
situation.
There is so many things that could go wrong. It's like parades.
Anybody else?
Can you stay all night? I mean, this is just unbelievably rich.
No, we can't.
Yes, let me just say
I'm
no,
starving.
Paula.
Yeah, buy a
Dennis-
book.
Dennis, talk a little about the found art that you turn into art. I mean, the
Which one?
anyone. Here, this one right in front of me here.
Oh, the unicorn?
Yeah.
Well, you know, those things are just laying everywhere, and they look at you and they go, I'm a unicorn, you know, you just, and then you can't put it down. You pick it up, you go, oh, God, I got to carry this thing all the way back to my car. God dang it, you know. I've got it down, though, to where if it's too much to carry, I just leave it where it is. But if I can actually pick it up without hurting myself and take it, you know, I have been known to lift driftwood.
Why the pieces are getting smaller and smaller?
They are. The older you get, the smaller the pieces get.
Do you have a rule, like I can only add so much stuff? I mean, the warthog is, for example, it looks like it's fairly embellished with a...
Well, some of them, you know, it depends on the mood you're in. You know, if you're in a complicated mood, but a lot of things don't need very much, you know. That's one of the keys to this stuff, is to learn how to shut up. You know, it's like saying too much. You got to learn how to just say the least amount that you can possibly get away with, you know, when you're doing sculptures and things. You just want it to, you know, let the person, you know, get what's going on. It's like a treasure hunt, you know.
And they're treasures. Anybody have any comments or questions? There's many other pieces of art to explicate.
There behind you, the beautiful, you know, really beautiful.
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Now, That, we came back from across the Cook Inlet one day in the landing craft that this friend of mine had up there, and we pulled into Seldovia, and we were dropping something off there, and there was this wild-eyed hippie guy standing on the dock with all these pieces of wood, and he said, I don't have any money, and I need to get all this stuff over to Homer. Can you guys give me a lift? And it's like $150, to haul something or somebody across the bay. But, we were feeling pretty good about the whole thing. So you just load them up, So he got down and piled them all in the boat. And we took him across the bay. And when we got to the other side, he said he left one of them in the well deck and said, here, thanks for, giving me a ride across. And it just so happened that we had been moose hunting over in Iliamna, and one of the kids that was with us growled at a great big grizzly bear that was walking down a riverbed over there. And the bear took off at a dead run right at us and climbed the cliff right next to us and stood up on its back legs. It was like 9 feet tall. As tall as this thing, and maybe a little taller, and looked at us, like, you're not a bear. It just had this look in his eye like, you're not a bear. and we got these guns, we're all, and the closer the bear gets, your gun just gets smaller and smaller. Pretty soon you just got this little pea shooter of a gun, you go, oh my God. And if you shoot him, he was not going to die. He is going to bite everybody 5 or 6 times before he, succumbs to the problem. So you don't want to shoot, and the bear got this funny look on his face like, they're not bears, and dropped down on his front feet and turned and, didn't run, just kind of walked off down the hill a little ways, and then he turned around and looked at us again, went, oh, and then he walked away, And nobody said anything to the kid that growled at the bear. Nothing needed to be said. It was settled. So when I got back to the house with this piece of wood, that was fresh in my mind. I thought, I should make a bear face as big as that bear's face was. And it was a pretty serious bear, probably 1,200 pounder. And so I turned that into that. That's what it is. That's how big his face was, too. He was amazing.
Ray, I think you had a question. I just wanted to know some of the backstory on the Alaskan part up here. Did you spend time?
Yes, I did. I carved with the Bellicula Indians. I carved with the Eskimos, the Tlinkits. They don't like us. We have not done well with them. We have ruined their culture. We have just by doing what we do. This is how that's how we are. And so they don't even want to talk to you when you're there. But I found that if you get out there and whittle a little bit and scare them a little bit, you can whittle like they can, that they will break down and actually talk to you and sort of be friendly with you, And I met some really nice people from it. And these are pieces, the Eskimo with just the face is a guy named Leroy. He's a whaler. He's a guy who throws the harpoon, and it's they still whale up there, and it's a position that it's a given position. It's an honor to be the guy who throws the thing. And he was concerned about the whales. He was very in touch with the world, And I just thought he had a great face, and so I made him. And he liked it too. He liked the thing. He said it looked like him, And the other mask is the one with the crooked fin on the top. Teal was worried about that being crooked on the wall. I said, no, that's what they look like. This is the Orca clan. This is the Bellicula Orca clan mask. And it's pretty much what they, do with the whale face. This is what they put on the totem poles. And the red hands one, the helping hands, the mask of, this whole thing. This is from the Joseph Campbell tapes. I don't know if you guys saw the Joseph Campbell tapes, but on the cover of that thing with Bill Moyers, they had a picture of this thing, and it's a Bella Coola death mask. They chop a hole into the totem pole, and they put the guy's ashes in the hole, and then they cover it up with a mask like this. And these over here, these are dance masks. These are the kind of things they have. The bear mask there is, they have a ceremony called Wake Up the Bears. And they have somebody in a bear suit laying on the ground in the middle of the whole thing. And people come around with they got all their fancy regalia on and stuff, and they wake up the bear. And the bear gets up, and it's the ceremony for the spring, when the spring is coming. So that bear was danced in that mask, in that show. And the other one is, the rest of them are just, the black one is an Eskimo raven mask, a copy of one of them that they made up there, And most of this stuff is made out of the original wood from the yellow cedar, and the stuff is so nice to work with. When you're making stuff, you work with the good smelling material, Anybody else? Wendy.
I want this to use a piece down on the ground. Can you pick that up and show them the bottom of that? 'Cause nobody gets to see it.
This is the raven mask. The raven is the trickster, and Turner. And this is an Eskimo woman. And when you get out and get to having fun with the Eskimo woman, all of a sudden the trickster, she swells up in the front, and all of a sudden you're involved in life. You've been tricked into being a dad and a whole bunch of things, And that's what this is about. It's the raven and the trickster. It's a common thread in that society. And ours too. It works the same right here.
Got time for one or two more questions, comments,
Criticism.
announcements?
What do you do in your spare time?
I write books. I've been having a lot of fun writing.
Okay, I think we'll say thank you, Dennis. It's such an honor to have your art here.